Welcome back to Ask Jessie Neeland. I'm Jessie. This is my Q&A video series. I'm actually answering a question that's come up recently in several of my coaching calls, which is the question of what does it look like when you love your body? Or what does it look like or feel like to arrive at body confidence or self-acceptance or self-love? Basically, what does it look like and feel like after you've healed your body image issues? And I want to answer this for a few reasons. The first one is that it's really important that I make very clear that there's no arrival. It is an ongoing process. It is a lifelong process because what it really is the question of self-acceptance in all of its forms. It's not as simple as just learning to love your thighs and get on with it, because we do live in a message-filled society with all of these messages for women about how our worth is tied to our looks and our youth and our weight and all of these things, that we have to perfect ourselves in order to be lovable and to be wanted and to be accepted and belong. So it's really difficult in the world that we live in. It's really, really difficult, and therefore for that reason alone, it is an ongoing process. It's not something you just arrive at and then you're done working on it forever. It is, however, incredibly different to be on the other side. For me, the other side of what I consider to be doing a lot of the healing work around this stuff, where I can still hear the self-critical voices that used to plague me all the time. I can still hear them in my head, but they don't have any power. And I want to really just demonstrate by sharing a little anecdote with you what that actually means in practice, because I do consider myself to be as far on the other side of having healed body image issues as a person can be. That these messages don't hold power for me anymore, that they're in no way tied to my worth, that you could certainly hurt my feelings if you insulted me, or my body or my looks. Like if you were mean to me, it would hurt. It will always hurt. But that doesn't change the fact that it's no longer attached to my worth. It's no longer attached to my identity. And that's the big difference in my mind for what before and after looks like. The before for most people is a sense that their identity, their worth, their value, their lovability, their ability to connect or be accepted, that all has to do with their bodies and their appearances, and that afterwards that's no longer the case. So it's really a separation of those things, which of course requires both really digging into the cultural messages, because that's the messages we get, that all that's true. And it also requires cultivating a sense from the inside of who you really are. And part of that is cultivating the sensations that your body's giving you, learning how to actually recognize the messages your body's constantly talking to you and telling you, from things like skin sensation, to emotions, to intuition, that these are ways your body talks to you constantly. And a lot of the messages it gives you are cues, like things you have to do. So you have to learn how to cultivate that connection to the inside and cultivate a life that supports this you, this amazingly unique you, who you are, who is of value, no matter what you look like. So that's kind of what I believe the work is: separating the identity from how you look, cultivating a strong sense of connection to you, both your physical sensations and cues, and also like who you are, who you want to be in the world, what lights you up, what do you have to offer, the universe, like what are you here for? So kind of big existential stuff comes up for this, but on the far side of that, it's not that you're impervious to body image issues or messages, because those things will still come up. You'll try on a jumpsuit one day and you'll be like, oh my God, like my body looks terrible. And you'll notice that. It's not that you're going to totally stop noticing that. It's that it won't have power. That right now, that might be hard to imagine, because noticing that your love handles are spilling over and you obviously need a bigger size than you're used to or something might be a cause for panic. But when you start really working with body image issue healing, you can start to see that these are not actually negative things you're noticing. They are just things. Like your body is full of stuff to notice. You might notice, oh, I have more gray hairs than I'm used to, or oh, I've gained a few pounds, or whatever. Oh, I have a breakout. And all of those things are okay. They're actually totally normal and totally okay. And you can notice them without having the barrage of criticisms in your ear, So when I talk about what it looks like and feels like to be on the other side of body image issues, what I mean is that yes, you notice things that used to trigger you into self-criticism or self-doubt, but they don't hold any power. And to demonstrate that, I wanted to share a quick story of what this actually looks like for me recently. So I was recently at a party and I was wearing a crop top, and I had felt really bloated when I put that crop top on, but I was traveling and I hadn't packed much else. And I really wanted to wear it. It was this really cool looking top that I hadn't had an excuse to wear yet. And I had an excuse to wear it that night. And so I noticed that I was bloated. And my first thought was like, you can't wear this, you're too bloated. And then that thought didn't have any power. It just was there. It just like, walked across the front of my mind. And I was like, thank you, message. I'm going to wear it. So then I wore it, and I made a conscious effort throughout the evening. There were times that I'd catch myself like sucking my belly in because I was like, everybody can see that I'm bloated in this crop top. And then I'd make the conscious effort to relax it. The moment I noticed, it just happened occasionally because I've worked really hard for years to learn how to relax my belly and not hold it in. But I would just occasionally, I'd be like, someone new would join the conversation and I would notice like, ooh, I sucked it in again. Okay, let it go. So there was a couple moments like that throughout the night, but I knew that I was staying in my power as somebody who feels strongly about, for example, wearing a crop top when you're bloated, because it's not actually bad to have a nice round belly is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason to hide that. So I was staying in my integrity by making these choices. And then I was dancing on the floor, we're all dancing, and I saw this guy who years ago I asked out. And he turned me down because he had just started dating someone who I think is his fiance now, or maybe they're married. But she was there too, and she's this fabulous fitness girl. Like she just has like a rockin', super hard, super tight fitness body. She's gorgeous. So I see him and I see her. And again, I see this thing happens in my brain. And what it is the old message, the old thing that my brain would have said that I would have freaked the fuck out about, prances through my mind. And it says something like this, because, I stopped working out basically. And I no longer have like that, tight, lean fitness body anymore. I'm not a trainer. I've changed a lot of priorities in my life. So I'm much softer now. And of course, I had that extra knowledge that I was kind of bloated and wearing a crop top. So the old message prances through my mind and it says, he's going to look at me and he's going to think, wow, Jessie has really let herself go. Thank God I turned her down on that date so many years ago and have this hot-ass fitness model wife. And as it occurred to me, I felt momentarily like oh no, that'd be so sad if he thought that, like, that would just suck. What a bad feeling. And then I remembered, oh yeah, like, that's madness. I don't care about any of that. And then the next thought that paraded right behind it, right on its tail. So like that kind of marched through my brain and I was like, interesting. And then right behind it was, you're a boss-ass body image coach who made choices that are totally in alignment with your beliefs and your values and your brand and your like best life. So if he thought that, he'd be wrong. And I don't think he would anyway, right? Like that's not something most people actually think to themselves. But 5 years ago, it would have killed me. I would have been so self-conscious and so embarrassed and like so insecure, around him, or just I would suddenly have felt like everyone was looking at me and how I wasn't good enough. So it was just a completely different conversation in my head. It was like the old message, which really made me be like, what a mean thing to say to myself. Like, I noticed it. It didn't have power over me. I just was like, that's incredibly mean. What a mean thought. And then right behind it was this rush of validation for myself, which is like, hey man, yeah, you're softer and you're rocking this top with a little bit of a bloated belly because that is what you fucking believe in. That's what I was able to tie my identity to, my values, my integrity, not what I look like, not what somebody else thinks of me. So that was just a quick example. And I had the same thought with her too. Like, I wonder, probably not did he ever mention that I asked him out, but like I did wonder, man, if she knows that I asked him out right when they started dating, like I bet she doesn't like me and I bet she's going to look over here and be like, yeah, that's right, bitch. Like who looks better now, right? So again, it's that old message of just meanness, just self-bullying really, of just projecting, imagining the worst thing I could think these two really nice people who I like would say about me in their own heads when they saw me. And that is the old way of thinking, and I would be lying if I said I never had thoughts like that, like if that never crossed my mind or anything, because I do occasionally have those thoughts, but they have no power because now I can notice it and go, wow, that was a mean thing to say to yourself. And then right behind it comes a validation that has nothing to do with what I look like. if it did have to do with what I looked like, it wouldn't be deep enough to really validate, like I can't just say, oh, screw them, I look even better curvy, because I don't know if I think that's true. I think both were fine, but it's not about that. It can't be about that. So healing body image issues means you have to tie yourself, your value, your worthiness, your ability to validate yourself to something that isn't what you look like. And that's a huge, huge part of it. A lot of my clients come in and they think they have to learn how to believe that they look, perfect, or they have to believe that they're beautiful or sexy. And I don't believe that that's possible. I mean, it might be possible, but it's not the point. And it's actually a far more challenging way, I think, of trying to get to the same goal, when really what we want is to feel valid, valued, loved, accepted, like we belong, and like people like us. It's so simple. We want to connect with people, and we want to feel worthy of connection. So for me, the fact that I used to think I was only worthy of connection based on how I looked is what that old message says. You don't look good enough, that's why you're not worthy of connection. They're going to be mean to you. But it doesn't have power anymore, because I know now that my worthiness of connection is based on something completely else. And for me that night, it was about this, my integrity as a body image coach, and what I believe to be a leader in this field. So it was allowing me to tie myself to something so much deeper, so much bigger than like a soft belly and, having gone up a size or two since I saw them last, So anyway, so that's what in my practice, or like in my, story, that's what it looks like to be on the other side. And I hope that this is helpful. I've mentioned the story a few times with clients where it's like, trying to answer that question, because nobody knows how to set a goal for body image. Like, well, what am I even going for? Like, what is this going to all look like or feel like or sound like when I actually succeed at healing from body image issues? And a lot of times, first of all, it's not an end point. It can never be an end point. But a lot of times it's something like this, where you can notice the same stuff you might notice now, although I notice it way less often, let me be clear. But occasionally those thoughts still arrive, and you can just observe them pretty impartially. Like, you can immediately remember that the truth is that if somebody doesn't like me because I'm like higher body fat percentage, like, my goodness, do I not want that person in my life, So my worthiness of connection is not based on what other people think of me and what they see when they look at me. It's not even how they treat me. It's definitely not what I look like. And those are the things that have allowed me to get to this point where I can say those, I can tell this story and offer the insight that those messages are never going to fully go away, but you do have the power of not being, caught up in them or impacted by them in the kind of negative, triggering, panicky, stressed out way that most women that I work with anyway, find themselves doing now. So I hope that's helpful. You can always submit your questions for Ask Jessie Kneeland at my website, jessieKneeland.com/contact.